Yo, what's up? Sarah Darko here with Mr. Dominic Rapson, and we're back again for another video. And this video today, we're going to talk about the top health myths that are keeping us fat with low energy and libido. And I've got the notes here because these are all things that people have asked me about nutrition. And I thought rather than me answer it by myself, it's just like more entertaining and better with Dominic here to go deeper on the actual science of it all. All right, so we're gonna just knock these out. Okay, I've got 10 here. I'm gonna knock them out straight away. So, question from James. He said, "If carbs are bad, why aren't Asians obese?"
That's a really funny one. So I have noticed as I've been traveling around Asia now, living in Bali, everywhere I've been, like you look at the more developed cities, let's just like name places in Malaysia, or let's just name Singapore, for instance, as well. A lot of these people, they're skinny fat. They all eat, majority eat meat, don't get me wrong. They have like this tiny little portion of meat sitting on a mound of rice and vegetables. They're all skinny fat. So they may not look like the kind of fat you see in the States or Europe, but they're not in ideal shape or health either. And actually Singapore has extremely low rates of fertility in their women and their men, which shows there's a big hormonal issue because they're not eating enough saturated and they're eating too many carb heavy foods and processed foods. Now, if you want to look at the Indonesians and stuff as well, a lot of them as well, guess what? Skinny fat as well. So unless you've been to these places, I don't think you really know. I don't think you've really noticed. But you've also got to remember this as well. If you are, let's just say, not so financially well off and you're not eating very much, your portions are quite small. They're kind of intermittently fasting just because they have to, and they only eat once or twice a day. They don't have much money for food, and when they do eat, it's a small portion. And then they're out working in the hot heat all day. They're using up a lot. And also vitamin D and the stores that you get from the sunlight also help with energy and also help with metabolism. If you're sleeping well, you're away from modern pollutants, environmental pollutants, and blue light, it also helps regulate your weight and your mitochondria a lot better. There's so many more factors than just food when it comes to that. But they also, if you look at China as well, many parts of China, their longevity is not high. Their bodies are flabby and weak and not dense. So guys, just being fat or not fat in what you think is fat doesn't actually determine much of a truth.
Yeah, and I would add to that, like when I first came to Asia, I just thought everyone was skinny. But then as I started living here longer and longer, I realized actually, wait, they're mostly like skinny fat. Lots of people here are overweight.
Yeah,
just
the
not
kids
to the
are
level.
pretty swollen and overweight.
Yeah, just not to the level they are in America or England.
Yeah, because they don't have that abundance of food and affordability for all of these foods. And obviously they're not as entwined with the processed foods. A lot of these people are fat because they're just eating very carb heavy foods with a teeny bit of meat on the side.
Yeah, and another question is, well, I'm going to add this is not actually a question in here, but the people talk about the Mediterranean diet, how the Italians eat a lot of pizza and they live long. So can you talk on that?
That's a funny as well, because if you look at the list of longevity, Italy is not that high up there either. But actually Italians eat a lot of saturated meat as well, but they also eat a lot of anciently sprouted grain. But there's a lot of obese in Italy as well. I mean, I was just actually training with a guy that lives around Milan, and he's saying that everywhere he looks, people are getting fatter and fatter, and they're all eating grains. And then if you look at the Roman Empire and you look anthropological wise, with the trade that started from Egypt, which was the first civilization to prize and grow grains, which is why much of their land was turned to desert, but also why the Egyptians were short, flabby-bodied as well, and their bone structures were weaker. This also started to happen to the Romans, and actually the gladiators were fed this like gruel of grains, and they were actually overweight and flabby-bodied as well. That also happened to the Greeks. I've actually did a few lectures in Greece, and I noticed that most of the population in Greece is pretty overweight. And every time we went to a restaurant, the first thing that comes out, a whole loaf of bread. Yes, they had butter, but it was a whole loaf of bread. So these Mediterranean diets aren't actual Mediterranean diets. If you look at the real Mediterranean diet from the actual Mediterranean, some of the islands, the southern parts, and even the more hilly and northern parts as well, they eat a lot of dairy, they eat a lot of lamb or goat, and they eat a mixture of other fats as well from olive oil and fish. They are predominantly high-fat diets with a little bit of vegetation and fruits that grow naturally in their areas. So that is the true Mediterranean diet. It's actually a few legumes, a few berries, a few grains, but a lot, and the central part of their communal dishes and when they sit together as a family is the meat, the chicken, the lamb, the goat, the fish.
Right. Okay. And John said, our ancestors didn't live long, so therefore meat is not the answer. So can we talk about ancestral eating, why they didn't live long, and all this kind of stuff?
Okay. Well, actually, we see from the bone deposits that we collect through carbon examinations that our ancestors were actually a lot denser than we were. They had a higher pain threshold. They could take stumbles, falls, and attacks from predators a lot better than we can now. So as a species, we've actually softened. And also, we've noticed a decrease in brain size. Saturated fat increased the brain size, and since diminishing from the agricultural revolution, the agrarian revolution, we started to see a diminishing brain capacity. And actually, it's noted from scans that vegetarian and vegan brains actually had a further 2.7% decrease in mass and gray matter. So why didn't our ancestors live so long? Well, tell me, if you right now could go into the wilderness without hospitals, modern comfort, without tools designed to you by machines, and without all of the supermarkets and abundance of food, and if you fell over, broke your leg, or if you got bitten by a venomous animal, or if you were being hunted by a bigger cat or something like that, how long would you survive? How difficult was it for them to survive the nature, which is harsh? It doesn't give a shit about us, as I said before. How would you survive that? Would you have a long life expectancy when you don't have the modern comforts of today? They didn't die from modern diseases. They didn't die from heart attack. They didn't die from stroke. Most of them didn't die from cancer. Does that say that they weren't cancers? Cancers can form from any cell at any time. But most of these modern diseases, diabetes, most of these mental diseases, they were not dying from that. They were dying from nature's effort to keep their population down as they fitted their role as animals.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that, because that's a big topic that most people don't understand, is the ancestral living and how
It's very difficult.
we just moved so far from ancestral eating.
Yeah, we've
over the
manipulated
years.
our environment as well to make it safer and to help us live longer.
Yeah.
And obviously there's medical breakthroughs. We're not saying that, don't use any of the medical breakthroughs of today. They're a huge part as to why we survive so many natural bacteria and viruses and such.
Absolutely. So we got Mary. She has said, if I eat lots of red meat, that increases my cholesterol because of the saturated fat, which increases my risk of bowel cancer or colon cancer. And my doctor says I need to cut down on my red meat. So what do you say to that?
First of all, I use my experience. One of my first ever clients had colon cancer, fully recovered on red meat. I'm not saying I'm a healer. I'm saying that the body was given space to heal and they applied the protocols, and the lifestyle long-term changes and the positive thinking that it created a peaceful state in their body and a biochemical difference that allowed them to change. Now, there is no study that will ever prove any causation of cancer from red meat. They even did a diet on mice as well, which is most of the studies are on mice. And they fed the mice bacon-only diets, and actually the mice lived longer, and none of the mice had any colon issues whatsoever from the bacon or even the nitrates in bacon. So you'll never find any proof of colon cancer or any cancer given off from red meat. There's actually a study you can look up right now that was recently done in the late 2000s, 2011, 2012, where 5 terminally ill brain cancer patients, 2 of them survived. The other 3 had better sustaining long lives before they were affected negatively by the tumors in the brain, and it was all on a ketogenic meat diet. So I tell you, look deeper than what you've been told. Epidemiology, as I said, does not show causation. It's a survey that does not take in all of the viable and I mean, it doesn't take in all of the things that could affect such issues.
Right. And so this one's from Jason. He's a African American. I have to say that because this is what his question is. He said, "What about the skin on chicken? Does that increase cholesterol? Because lots of black people eat the skin on chicken, and they have prostate problems because of this increase in cholesterol. So, what's to say about African Americans and prostate cancer, especially in males?"
I mean, I don't see any reason to mention African American. It doesn't really make a difference where you're from.
Yeah.
But chicken, I don't actually eat much chicken at all. And I find because you can get protein starvation from just eating chicken. It is lean, it doesn't contain much fat soluble nutrition, and it's actually high in omega-6. Our ancestors ate a ratio of 1-to-1 omega-3, omega-6, sometimes 2-to-1 omega-3 to omega-6 in the red meats and fish and shellfish and much more that they were eating. Chicken is predominantly omega-6 and it's quite inflammatory without giving you the fat soluble nutrition that will help your body reduce inflammation markers. Now, mix chicken with loads of grains, and a lot of Africans eat a lot of rice with that and a lot of other things with it, and you're in for a recipe for disaster, and you will cause inflammation, and prostate issues are from stemming long-term chronic inflammation.
Okay, so just to clarify, prostate issues come from inflammation because of all the other crap people are eating along with the meat.
And just maybe just sticking to just eating chicken and no diversity in that.
Right.
Which, as I said, leads to protein starvation. It is not a rich nutrient source, and you need all of the nutrients. If you're avoiding nutrients, which is why a lot of long-term plant-based and fitness industry people who are just eating chicken, broccoli, rice over and over again, or just eating certain vegetables and no meat, they're not getting enough fat-soluble nutrition. They eventually break down. They start to get sick more often after a few years.
Yeah, and that was me. I was eating a ton of chicken when I first started out, and I was still getting sick quite often, even though I was training. Because when you train, you're actually depleting some nutrients. You need like the glutamine, right?
Glutamine, yeah.
You need all that. You need all those nutrients to replenish your immune system.
Carnitine, carnosine.
And if you're just eating lean chicken,
you're not getting much of that, and you're increasing the inflammation in your body. There's people that actually are clients of mine that completely forgot about this, that I've taught them, and they started drinking chicken bone broth every day, and then they started feeling joint pain and such. They removed the chicken bone broth, not a problem. They went back to just normal lamb and beef bones, which contain a far more array of nutrients.
Yeah, absolutely. And bone broth is a whole nother video.
Yeah.
You guys know I love bone broth, and Dominic loves bone broth.
Yeah.
Oh man. So Jason, again, another Jason, he said, we need carbs to survive and build muscle. So how do you call eating protein and fat as like the one thing that humans need when we need protein?
Okay.
We need carbs.
I'm not sure how he's been so confused, because this is just basic physiology and chemistry. That, as I said, there's no essential carbohydrate on the planet. Mm-hmm. You are not made of carbohydrate, you are made of protein and fat. So why would your body replace protein and fat with carbohydrate? I hope that answers your question. I mean, do we really need to go that much further into this one?
Yeah,
because it's quite a silly, obvious thing. I mean, this is something that you learn in like early grade school,
Yeah, but the fitness industry, they're like, oh, you need the carbs. If you want to build muscle, you need the carbs.
Yeah, well, water follows glucose.
Yeah.
So when you eat a load of glucose, it flushes more water into the muscles, which makes it look fuller and makes you have that pump. But then it all goes away. A lot of the people that go onto carnivore or keto, a lot of the kilos that they lose right away, it's just water weight that the body's holding as inflammation.
Yeah.
You don't need carbohydrates to build muscle. I mean, if you want to get really huge and you're like 3-4 hours in the gym building for volume, the carbohydrates may help increase and give you more energy to keep doing what you're doing and accelerate some growth. But as I said, cholesterol and the building blocks of your tissues, which is the full amino acids, and predominantly the carnitine, carnosine, and tryptophan, which are markers of longevity also, which you can look up, actually build muscle very easily without much effort, hypertrophic wise.
Okay.
So yeah, you don't need carbs to build muscle. Do they help if you're a professional bodybuilder? That can still be questioned. There are a few bodybuilders that still build on all meat diets and build very well. You can even look up Dr. Sean Baker, who is 53 years old now, and has an excellent amount of muscle mass, bigger than most of people around his age. He's even looking bigger than Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's shriveling up on a vegan diet now.
Shout outs to Arnold. Okay, so we got David. He said, bacon is processed meat, which leads to bowel cancer. 70 grams of processed meat is standard guidelines per day. So why? He said, why should we eat bacon, and why are the guidelines so small for meat?
Yeah, well, I just said earlier about the mouse study. There was no causation whatsoever. People still push that study as, oh, look, see, it shows that. But you can look at Amber O'Hearn and other doctors who have broken this down even better than I have, and you see that they were just trying to use a hypothesis rather than a conclusion. So there is no issues. You actually get more harmful nitrates from spinach and leafy greens such as kale as well, which are harmful nitrates from the soil, which you can actually overdose on and cause severe issues. The nitrates in bacon are natural salts. Some are chemically made as well, but they have never been shown to be causing any cancerous issues or any abnormalities in the body. The body seems to process just fine. And actually the amount that you get from bacon is so minimal. As I said, you get a lot more from a serving of greens that you are not fit to eat as compared to bacon that comes with the fat soluble nutrients being predominantly fat.
Okay, so you're saying don't eat kale, don't eat spinach, eat more bacon. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think that's music to most people's ears, right?
Yeah. Well, again, it's like the domino has to fall, and I mean, we're talking for people watching this.
Yeah.
Like, people need to believe that, saturated fat is not the devil. Because as long as you're believing that saturated fat is the devil, you're never gonna get off the kale, get off the spinach. And we're not advocating that. We're just saying, like, to eat more of the food that we need.
I'm a huge advocate of that, because I now understand the actual interference of those leafy greens on the hormones of the human body and on the digestive system. They wreak havoc. The nitrates and the anti-nutrients that come with that, actually, most of the vegans and or vegetarians and just some of the normal clients as well that are especially female that come to me, they all have thyroid issues, and it all stems, after I've done their analysis, from consuming green juices and eating cooked and raw leafy greens, watercress, spinach, kale, lettuce, all of these things. And there's so much contamination that these plants absorb from the soil that goes into their body and disrupts their hormones and glands.
Yeah, the thyroid, that's a whole another topic. We can even do one video on that. Like, thyroid issues is a huge deal. And that's, it leads to weight gain, thyroid issues.
Yeah, and it can be fixed, but people just go to the doctor and get pills. Yeah, get pills.
Yeah,
and
they
then can't metabolize anything properly anymore. Yeah.
Okay, so bacon is in, spinach and kale is out.
Yeah, the kale-spiracy.
Kale-spiracy. Okay, so we got Sarah. She said, these are all kind of like the same questions, but she's got a question here. It's different, kind of different. Isn't vegetable and fruit juicing good for detox?
Okay, so methylation and the systems of detoxification occur naturally by the body once the body has space to do so, which is why intermittent fasting is a key protocol for modern people, and it's something that was naturally done as an unwritten law by all ancestral people that were just living by nature's rule, that did not have the abundance of food we have now. Juicing does not create a better state or homeostasis of the body to detoxify. I used to work in a juicery, and I used to believe this way after I was vegan also. I used to have my meat, and I used to think a green juice here and there was good as well. But you are drinking raw anti-nutrients that are going straight into your bloodstream and disrupting so many of your body's own natural process of mineral balance and nutrient balance. You're drinking straight up oxalates. These oxalates build up in the body.
Wait, so what are oxalates?
So oxalic acid. These are defensive chemicals that plants, especially leafy greens and stems of plants, and a lot of starches as well and roots have developed because they want to live. They protect themselves by making these chemicals because they can't run away like animals from us, or they can't run away from other animals. So they poison us from the inside and hurt us slowly so that we eventually stop eating them and allow them to keep living and reproducing, because every organism just wants to live and reproduce. So it has to come up with clever ways to defy its predators. Everything, even plants, are highly conscious and do feel pain and transmit and communicate with each other. So because they can't run away from us like other animals, they can't run away from other animals, they create oxalates. These build up in our tissues and leach into calcium and oxidize into crystals, very sharp crystals. And the amount of people that get arthritis or think they have arthritis and have sharp joint pain or niggles in their body, some of my clients even were going for surgery, and I was like, nope, remove this and that, get more of your cholesterol and saturated animal fat, and they heal completely without any surgery, and the arthritis magically disappears. It's actually because of oxalates. So look into the crystallization, oxidization of oxalates and the binding of calcium.
Yeah, and guys, you can do your own independent research. Everything we're saying here checks
we
out.
encourage you to. Don't just believe us because we're shredded.
I mean,
we're saying this so that you can go and look further.
Yeah.
Never just listen and just believe everything you say. This is what's happening with the vegan agenda. People are just listening in and like, oh, well, that fits in with my emotions and my beliefs. So yes, no, look it up, differentiate, and learn how to differentiate studies. Learn the difference between epidemiology, double controlled blind studies, and clinical trials. Know the difference. Know what you're reading. Don't just read. Don't read an influencer's blog just because they say something and they have 100,000 followers. I mean, shit.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's really important for people to understand, because they watch us and they're like, yeah, these guys are just talking, but we're actually just encouraging you to do your own research.
Yeah,
but
we're bringing points that you may not have thought about.
Yeah, exactly. And adding to the oxalate thing you were talking about, I remember at the back end of last year, I was eating a lot of vegetables, like I was telling you, and I didn't talk to anyone about this. I just mentioned it to my mum briefly, but basically my fingers were starting to cramp up. Like my joints weren't moving properly in my fingers, and I didn't know what the fuck was going on. And then that was around the time that I met you in England, and then started eating more meat. And then a month later, my joints are fine in my hands.
Yeah.
Like I don't really have that arthritis feel, like my hands are like tightening up, like I can't move my fingers. And that was after eating more meat and reducing the vegetables. So there is something to be said for the oxalates.
Yeah, I mean, dropping the oxalates, but also even if you don't get oxalate dumping when you're coming out and your body's trying to get rid of it, because your body tries to get rid of it later, and a lot of people feel the oxalate dumping and they get rashes and pain, and they have to do it quite slow. I have to do it quite slow with a lot of ex-vegans. But also the meat, and people think meat's inflammatory. It greatly reduces your inflammation markers and creates better blood flow and angiogenesis to anti-angiogenic balances. Look up what that means. And that's your formation of capillaries. So you have better capillary formation and less inflammation, your joints are going to feel better. And you're going to perform and recover better from activity.
Absolutely. So people say, okay, so the questions are done now. I'm going to just riff. I've got a few more questions here, but these are the questions that I formulated.
Okay.
So people say that eating foods high in cholesterol is bad for your body because your body produces cholesterol. So, I mean, this is stuff I've researched these questions.
That's what a lot of people are asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, your body recycles cholesterol, but is that recycling enough to feed a very active lifestyle and an ever-growing body, especially if you're trying to perform or be a robust human animal? We see that clearly it is not, and that's why vegans and vegetarians get heart issues, bone marrow starve, tissue wastage, they break down, and mentally they become ill because the brain starts to starve and the brain receives the wrong coding to the nervous system and gets the wrong disruptive symptoms. So like anxiety and depression aren't a disease, they're symptoms of a greater problem that's coming to your brain, because if you have anxiety or depression and you're no longer able to think clearly and navigate this natural world, you're not fit for survival and the brain is decaying. And Alzheimer's as well, which is another state of a type 3 diabetic, insulin resistance. And if you look at vegetarian and vegan diets, it's a high sugar diet, not even a high carb diet. Everything they eat turns to a high amount of glycogen. Fruits, the starches, the pulses, the beans, their processed foods, their treats, everything to them is sweet. They're sugar addicts, and that deteriorates the brain.
Well, okay, so this is an interesting topic, because I guess maybe this could be another video in depth, but we have a mutual friend. Oh, I don't think you know him. Maybe you do know of him, but he basically had cancer last year. Now he's 95% plant-based keto, and he's reversed his cancer. and having another friend as well who reversed cancer with keto. So what's to be said about plant-based keto? He's doing plant-based, 5% protein, 95% fat.
So it's funny because when these things happen, it's like, is it possible? It very much is possible. You got to think that when you're going on that style of vegan keto or keto, what are you doing? What is keto a result of? Like, we've got to answer this question. Keto is a result of the body working off very little calories and utilizing your own saturated fat. Yes, you have saturated fat. You are an animal, so you have animal fat too. The same animal fat you eat is within you, and your body eats at it. Do you see the connection there? So yeah, your animal fat is being used, and it's then used in helping the liver excrete ketones, beta hydroxyburide. Sorry, I always butcher that word, but look it up. Let me get to the bigger picture. So yeah, you're starting to use up very low calories, you're starting to store from your body. So what are you doing? You're giving your body space to autophagize, and which is cell programmed death, going around utilizing old cells, and tumors and abnormal cells and things like that, and eat them up and consume them for energy and to get rid of them, because you can allow the mitochondria to clear the waste and focus on what needs rejuvenating. So when these people are doing vegan keto and they get into ketosis, it's the same state that being on an all meat diet mimics. So being on eating high animal fat and saturates, getting that cholesterol, is putting you in that state. Why then do you think that it's not right to eat it, and why would you do vegan keto? Yes, vegan keto will help to a certain extent, but I know that 100% you would feel better with more abundance of animal fats rather than doing vegan keto. You're achieving the same state, but one's going to give you far more energy and one's going to allow you to rebuild far quicker than the other without wrecking your intestines. So you may reverse a cancer, but longer down the line, if you upkeep this, your energy levels and your intestine is going to be badly affected. I also personally don't think that ketosis as a whole should be maintained long term, because it is a state that we enter for either deep healing or survival in scarcity to keep our brain functioning in order to still hunt. If you want to live optimally and keep building your body up for high levels of activity, you shouldn't be worrying about ketosis. You should just be getting all the necessary blocks of cholesterol and proteins that you get from a complete source in the animal kingdom of foods, and you will still enter ketosis with this, but you will feel so much stronger and better than trying to starve yourself into the same position.
Yeah, and I've got a thing to add here. So with the whole ketosis thing, I mean, for people that do keto, and I've done keto for a little bit.
Yeah, I did it for 4 years.
Oh yeah?
4 years keto.
And so when you were doing keto, did you want to eat more protein? Because in keto, people are scared of eating more protein because it turns into glucose, right? Excess protein, gluconeogenesis. You can talk more about this.
Yeah. I mean, through intermittent fasting, you're entering stages of ketones and you're entering stages of cell program death, the autophagy. So the intermittent fasting is a big part. But the only way to intermittently fast for such long periods, like how I do OMAD, where I eat only once, sometimes twice a day in a short cell window. Cell window is the activation of mitochondria in your digestive system and other cells. But within a cell window of 2 to 6 hours at most, and I'm fasting anywhere from 23, which 23 hours is enough to clear all of the glycogen out of the body, to then 30 hours and maybe eating every other day, was by eating enough fat and protein in one sitting. That was the only way to do it. So to me, if you want to fuel more muscle growth, stay lean, and be able to fast longer and give your body more space to clean up and heal, you shouldn't be limiting protein. And that's where on the carnivore diet it's different. Why do we feel stronger and higher performance and higher muscle mass than people on ketogenic diets? Because we are eating protein, which is probably the most important macro you need to be consuming. Fat for the coating of your nerves and cells, but most protein comes with fat anyway. So if you're trying to stay lean, you're trying to build muscle, and you're trying to have good mental stamina and focus, you can't be short on the protein.
So when it comes to blood sugar levels, eating lots of meat, gluconeogenesis taking place.
Yeah.
Is that bad? Is that something we should be worried about?
No, that's why people want to argue. They say, yeah, but the brain and the muscles' primary system of energy is glycogen, glucose. Cool, dude. chill out. Nobody is going to argue that. That is biochemical truth, right? But does it mean you have to eat a shitload of it because you are a sugar addict? No, that's where the fitness industry is terribly wrong. That's where the plant-based movement doesn't get it either. Your body is extremely smart. Your liver, depending on its size, wants to hold anywhere from 300 to 400 grams of liver, which I heard you talking about as well.
Yeah.
And your bloodstream wants to maintain a balance of 4 to 6 grams at any one time flowing around your body. And your muscles, depending on how much muscle, which also links back to the longevity and correlation between muscle mass, means you're more metabolic flexible, means you're able to store more of these glycogen and use it far quicker without it inflaming your body. And so, yeah, the more meat you eat, eventually some of it is gluconeogenicide into glycogen stores. Because excess protein after your body has done the building or the storage is not just wasted or does not sit in your intestines rotting.
Yeah.
It goes into further energy. Those building blocks can be broken down into the simplest form, which is glycogen. So you don't have to eat simple stuff. You can eat the dense meat and still produce all the glycogen you need. And I tested this. I did a 30-hour fast straight into a full marathon in 27-degree heat with no food, no snacks, and only a small bottle of water, and recovered in, I think it was like 8 hours overnight.
Wow.
You don't need to eat sugar for glycogen. You don't need to eat carbohydrates for glycogen. Your body is extremely smart, and your body is extremely smart enough also to preserve muscle tissue and use excess amino acids into glycogen. And then obviously at a slower pace and at a slower rate, fat.
Yeah, and to add to this, when I first met you and I started eating more meat, I remember I cooked 1.5 kilogram silverside, put in the oven. My mum had 500 grams and I had a kilogram. Like I had 2/3 of it. And then I didn't eat for the next 30 hours.
Yeah,
and that was the first time in my life that I've never been hungry for 30 hours.
Yeah, your ghrelin was reduced, you were satiated. If you don't know what that is, it's the satiation of hunger hormones, so yeah.
Yeah, and it was crazy, and I started to, pay more attention to this because I'd heard you talk about it, eating more red meat, and at that time I wasn't eating much. I was probably eating like 2 servings a week, 3 servings a week, and then I thought, I'm just going to eat a lot of beef and see what happens. And then I was super blown away by it, everything.
And you weren't heavy or bloated,
wasn't bloated.
gassy.
Yeah. Like I could have had
constipated.
a kilogram of beef and I'd still be the same. I'd still look the same now.
Bloating, constipation, it's all not normal.
Yeah,
and all a result from eating stuff that's not a species appropriate, like fiber and vegetable matters that aren't fully absorbed.
Yeah, and I know this is not about the vegans, but one of the vegan comments they spew out there is, eat what gorillas eat or eat what elephants eat.
Yeah.
But we're not gorillas, we're not elephants.
Nowhere near close.
Yeah.
Nowhere few and far between, yeah.
Yeah, so, and also, for example, like, they're talking about where does protein come from? This is another thing vegans tell me is, think about where your protein comes from. Like, it comes from the grass, it comes from the plants. Yeah. But that's true, but we can't actually digest that protein.
We can't extract that.
We can't extract it.
As I said,
we don't have 4
a
stomachs.
We don't have
like
a 4 compartment stomach, we don't have a hind gut, and we don't have a large cecum. So 2% fermentation capacity is why you're farting, bloating, and in pain all the time from trying to digest that stuff, and why you're heavy and you don't get the energy that you should long term.
Yeah. We can't digest it.
We can't do it. We can't assimilate it.
But again, there's not many people talking about this stuff because, I mean, just eating meat, how much money would you save? I mean, I've saved so much money just not eating meat, so much time from cutting up my vegetables and
just eating meat. Yeah, so much time. It's so much easier.
Yeah, it's just an effortless lifestyle.
And people go, well, if you like meat so much, why don't you eat it raw and you have to do all of this stuff? And I'm like, do you not get that before we learned how to cook, we were eating it raw? And once you're adapted back into a strong stomach pH, which came from a scavenging background, which allowed you to eat rotten and dead flesh from leftovers of the bigger animals before we were a successful hunter, yes, most of us eat raw meat. I eat raw organs as well, and I eat most of my meat extremely raw because that's where you get most of the abundant nutrients inside. I just cook the outside for texture. But let me see you eat a whole bowl of raw veggies with no salt, pepper, oils, or sauces, or sugar, or any of that crap. But meat raw, even without salt, it's already quite salty, and it's freaking delicious.
Yeah. Actually, that's something that I need to do because I haven't done that yet. Is eat raw meat. I mean, I eat raw fish, but
yeah, same thing.
Yeah,
it's delicious and it's so soft and it's abundant in nutrients. Cooking a little bit just extracts some of the enzymes out, and makes it a little bit easier, which is why we started cooking it and why, as the tribes, we came together and cooked under the fire.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so much nutrition there and it's delicious, and we don't have to add any sauces or anything to it. It's just good to go. We digest it completely well. And many actually with severe autoimmune issues of the gut have to eat raw meat, which is an actual natural probiotic as well, so are dried and cured meats that are raw, and they heal tremendously fast.
That's actually the question I was going to ask you. So what about cured meats like chorizo, salami, pepperoni? Is that bad? Does it give us cancer?
No, same thing as the bacon, and same topic. And actually, a lot of them act as a probiotic.
Okay.
They're very, very good.
And
curing meats has been an ancestral thing for a very long time. It's been one of our main methods of preserving.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, we pretty much covered like a lot of stuff. I want to touch on the blood sugar level argument, because diabetics may be watching this video and they may be thinking, yeah, well, if I eat too much protein, it's going to be turned into glucose, then it's going to raise my blood sugar level. So how does that work?
So they definitely have to work with a professional, and they have to be slightly careful, and they have to work along the side of a doctor. But there are guys that have tried on their own and they've shown the case subjects. It's anecdotal, but they have had the readings from their doctors and everything shows fine, and they've been carnivore. How those people specifically did it, I'm not sure. I have my own methods, but I'm not going to go into that now, as that's very deep. But you can change your insulin resistance, and you can change your insulin production depending on what stage of diabetes you are. And you just have to be slightly more careful, but it shows extremely good results in the long-term maintenance of being a diabetic. So if you're type 1 diabetic, you may never fully have the function of your insulin again, but it shows that many people on carnivore diets or keto diets no longer need to inject insulin or watch their bloodstream too much as compared to when they were eating mixed diets. They also maintain their weight properly, they build muscle still and stay lean. Which is extraordinary for somebody that is injecting insulin, trying to keep up and can never maintain their body weight. Now with this disease, they can actually build muscle, maintain it, and not have to be injecting themselves all the time.
Yeah. So to summarize what we've been talking about, I mean, it seems like to me we talk for like 5 minutes, and I'm looking like it's like 37 minutes right now.
Yeah, it's a lot, man. And
So
we can still go deeper than this.
We can still go deeper. We've only scratched the surface.
Obviously, we reserve it for the people we work with instead of sides. Like, like when you're working with us two, you're not just working for ideas. You're working with, well, I don't know about you, but for me, it's 6 years of condensed experience and nutritional knowledge that has found an efficient and direct route to supply to someone to get started safely immediately.
Absolutely. So, because a lot of people look at you and they're like, "Oh, that's the meat guy."
Yeah, here in Bali, I'm the meat guy.
It's funny.
I've already made most of Canggu meat paste. That's hilarious.
It's funny because you're just empowering people to, realize the truth and see the other side of things, right? Like if you're eating smoothies every day and smoothie bowls and all these grains and stuff like that, you don't really know how well you could be feeling every day because you haven't really experienced it. So really, I think I can speak for you on this. Like all we're doing is getting you to see how much better you feel on more protein, more fat, decrease the carbs, cut out the processed crap, and then see how well you feel on that. And you won't want to go back to the other side.
Yeah, most people don't. And just like us, we're constantly searching for better as well. We're not closed-minded. It's like, meat's the answer. There may be something more. There may be another holistic protocol that we can add. We're constantly looking for the truth in order to pull it down to the rest of the people. Yeah,
absolutely. And is there anything else you want to share? Any other questions, big myths that you get a lot that I haven't covered in this video?
Oh man, there's so many still that we haven't covered. But
like what's like the biggest misconception people believe? We talked about carbs. We talked about cholesterol.
The biggest myth and misconception is that we were frugivores or starchivores, and that's how we evolved. And for those of you that still believe that or want to look into that, look at the biochemistry of the brain and look at what fueled the brain and look at the steps in between each evolution of the brain in connection with how we became this human organism and form you see now. And I really think that before you even understand nutrition and biochemical activities, look from the soil upwards in the whole chain of evolution. And today as well, look at the whole chain of nutrients starting from the soil. Understand how soil works, and you will understand every organism and climate on this planet.
Yeah, and that is a topic we can talk about next
The
time.
climate, yeah.
The climate, I mean, you know, oh, man, there's so much stuff to talk about.
So much, bro. Guess we have to spend more time together.
Yeah. Well, awesome, man. If you guys want help, like, there'll be a link below. Like, let us know if you want any more advice on topics that we haven't covered or anything that Dom can help with. He helps a lot with the internal systems, you know, like the autoimmune diseases and stuff like that. So if you guys got any more questions, let us know below and then we'll make some videos on it. All right, so safe.
Yeah,
Cheers.
safe.
Good one.